1870s, a mountain guide and developer named Joseph C.V. Hall came out west. He was famous for his work on Mount Washington in New Hampshire. But now his sights were set on Mount Diablo, which he said had more rare attractions to the lover of nature and fine mountain scenery than any mountain of the same altitude, perhaps in the world. By the spring of 1874, Hall and his business partners had built 2 toll roads up the mountain, one from the north, the other from the south. The newly accessible mountain was a big hit. Some 800 people paid the 25-cent toll in the first month. Hall added an observatory with a telescope at the top and constructed a 16-room hotel, originally called Toll House, later called Mountain House, 2 miles below it. A man named Seeley Bennett started taking people up to Mountain House in an open stage.
It was very popular. People would come there not only to stay overnight and see Mount Diablo. They came up for weddings and for christenings. And they got water from a nearby spring, delicious fresh water. And the story goes that spring disappeared with the San Francisco earthquake in April 1906. Probably the most illustrious person ever to stay at the Mountain House, or to almost sleep overnight at the Mountain House, was John Muir. He came for a visit to Mount Diablo. He hiked all the way to the top. He slept overnight. He enjoyed the sunrise. And then he started down. Joseph Hall's wife, Sarah Jane Hall, was the cook for the Mountain House, and her fame had spread quite a bit for her great cooking. So Muir stopped off for breakfast on the way down.
Mount Diablo's ranchers were never really comfortable with people traveling through their grazing land to get to this hotel.
They blamed them for scaring the cattle and starting fires. So they took this opportunity to petition the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors to close the roads in 1895. And after that, well, you could still get there, but you had to walk up, and the only people intrepid enough to walk up besides John Muir turned out were graduate students from UC Berkeley who made the trek every year. In 1901, the Mountain House mysteriously burned. The ranchers were always suspected of having precipitated the fire, but nothing could ever be proved. The one mysterious thing, when they went to visit the smoldering ruins of the Mountain House, was the doors and the windows were found in a creek bed. And that remained a mystery for several decades until finally one of the ranch hands on his deathbed fessed up. He said, yes, we indeed had burned down the Mountain House. And the rancher told us before we set it afire to take off the doors and the windows, because if we later got caught, we couldn't be prosecuted for arson on a dwelling, because without doors and windows, it wasn't a dwelling.
A little more than a decade later, tourism rose again, and this time it was a motorized revival led by developer Robert Noble Burgess.
Robert Noble Burgess' big idea was to build homes all the way to the top of Mount Diablo. Diablo Estates, they were to be called. And he built North Gate Road and South Gate Road to access the summit. He was so proud of his roads that he advertised them as being suitable for auto racing. He wanted to preserve Rock City, the mountain's most famous picnic area today. But he didn't like the name. He gave it a new name. He called it Garden of the Jungle Gods. And he gave names to many of the rocks that persist today, Elephant Rock and Whale Rock and Butterfly Rock. He built the Diablo Country Club. But the crown gem of this project was to be a castle on top of Mount Diablo called Torre del Sol, which was to be remarkably similar to what was later to become Hearst Castle. And there was a good reason for that. William Randolph Hearst was his financial backer for this project. But neither the homes nor the castle were ever built. William Randolph Hearst got into financial difficulty. And then, of course, America got into World War I, and William Randolph Hearst became interested in that. So what we are left with on Mount Diablo are 2 roads and Rock City. Garden of the Jungle Gods didn't last very long. One of the first actions when Mount Diablo became a state park in 1931 was to rename Garden of the Jungle Gods Rock City.